Hello farmers, thank you for tuning into Agricultural New Directions, Agribusiness in support of Vision 2030. Today we are here in Cheggutu in Mashonaland West, where we are looking at a maize production success story. We are now looking at harvesting and how it's going to be done today. Now if you look at SDG 1 and 2 respectively, or United Nations Agenda Vision 2030, it speaks of poverty alleviation and eradication of hunger. You would find that here in Zimbabwe, maize is our staple crop. It feeds the humans as well, take care of our stock feeds. Thank you, Zimbabwe, for tuning into yet another informative edition of your program. We are looking at maize harvesting, and I've taken the liberty of inviting Wendy Matashu Mazura. The name of our program is Agribusiness, like I've highlighted. We look at business fundamentals in agriculture and how to be successful and profitable in your business ventures. Wendy, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Wadza. It's always a pleasure.
As we get into our discussion, Wendy, I would like us to talk about maize production. This 2022-2023 season, we are concluding it. If you are harvesting, it means we have reached senescence, maturity. We are headed to the market now. How has been the season like?
That's a very pertinent question, Wadza. And as we move hand in glove with the initiatives of our parent ministry, the Ministry of Agriculture, which is to go for growth in any cropping venture that we are doing, we are seeing that the maize farming season was varied in its performance for different farmers and with different abilities. So we found that for those farmers with irrigation who managed to come in early with a crop in October, they managed to establish their crop successfully, and the rainfall was favorable for them to reach physiological maturity without the crop undergoing any stress. Those farmers have harvested their crop. Some of them, with irrigation, have had the opportunity to establish their winter wheat crop, and now it's at varying stages of development owing to the timeliness of the planting that they did. So with farming, the seasons have a ripple effect. If you miss one season, you will pay for about 2 to 3 seasons. So it's important for you to be on time. Then we find that those farmers who do dryland farming had the opportunity to establish their crop sometime in November. Why? Because we have seen a shift in the start of the rainfall season from the mid-October that we were used to around end of October, early November. So most dryland crops were established in November, with some farmers having established their crops on a dry field, waiting for the season to start, and some farmers establishing their crop when the effective rains were received. So for those farmers, they managed to get a good yield, particularly those who planted in November. But the later plantings that came mid-December, end of December, and early January, those farmers suffered a bit of moisture stress when there was a premature termination of the rainfall season, where we found that when March came, we had very little rainfall activity. So this affected most of our maize farmers who had a late crop. But nonetheless, most of the maize managed to reach physiological maturity, and now we are talking about harvesting. Though we had some forced dry down on some of our crops because of the termination of the rain.
Okay, thank you so much, Wendy. That was very detailed. Now I'd like us to talk about the most pertinent issue in agriculture. We are talking about yield. You would find that in our different geographical locations, or even in the same area or same province, with the same soil type, with the same seed variety, there are varying yields. What could you attribute that to? What could be the factors that result in farmers, maybe someone saying I have 12 tons per hectare, it's the same soil, it's the same region, it's the same variety, and the other one is saying maybe I have 6 tons per hectare. What could be the reason in this variation?
It's a very interesting question indeed, and it has many dimensions to it. Where you find that as we were driving here to check, we saw a lot of different farms along the way, and a lot of different management practices that were employed that fall under the umbrella term of good agronomic practices. So the good agronomic practices that we are referring to boil down right from the seed selection, the land preparation, the management, the planting practices that the farmer is going to do. Are they going to use equipment that is well calibrated? If it's not well calibrated, you get unnecessary gaps in the field, and your population won't be optimum even from the word go. Then we go to the nutrition management. Yes. Some farmers don't even know what up to this day their soil pH level, where they need to correct the pH level for fertilizer use efficiency to be achieved. They don't even know their soil type and whatever their soil requires in terms of conditioning. Then moving away from that, we go into the issue to do with weed management itself. There are some fields that you struggle to find out what crop has been established there, because there is an overshadowing of the crop by the weeds because of the poor management. But we are seeing here a very clean field where there are no weeds, which means that optimum weed management was done here at this farm where we are. So in terms of weed management, some farmers are suffering a lot there, where the rains that were received last year, they were persistent. So if you did not plan your things timeously, you would fail to go into the field to control the weeds. And the weeds would grow out of control to a stage where you wouldn't be able to put in some herbicides or to go in with people to do manual weeding. So weed management is also critical. Then there is the other issue that our farmers really suffer from: poor insect pest management. Did you know, Waza, that the problematic fall armyworm has a tendency of eating even the cob and affecting even the silks, to an extent that even the number of kernels that you get per cob is affected. So if you fail to control insect pests timelessly, you'll be found wanting, bringing us to a point where farmers with the same resources, the same soil type, and the same opportunities will get, one farmer will get 10 tons on a hectare, another farmer will get 10 tons on 20 hectares, another farmer will get 10 tons on 100 hectares, which is to say there's one farmer making profit and one farmer who is incurring a loss. So it's important for us to increase productivity by increasing in terms of the management practices that we are putting in, the good agronomic practices. We need to adhere to them.
Now, when we want to talk about maintaining your yield, when it comes to harvesting, are there some factors that you'd want to highlight and emphasize on in terms of maybe looking at your maize field? What do you look at when you're saying that this has reached senescence, this has reached maturity, I'm now going to be harvesting my maize? What are those factors? And can we have a great emphasis in terms of moisture content? We are talking now that we are headed to the market. There is no way a farmer is going to keep his 80-hectare yield in his house. He's now going to the market. What can you highlight or talk to us in terms of our audience that is looking at home, in terms of moisture content and generally maintenance of your yield at your farm?
Maturity as a term, Waza, tends to be very subjective. Why? Because there are a lot of factors that govern the maturity of any crop. A farmer should be guided by the days to maturity of the variety in question. For example, if you establish an early, a medium, a late, or an ultra early maturing variety, it should mature at least within that stipulated time frame. But it will also differ, guided by the heat units that you experience in a particular area and the management practices which are going to be employed by the farmer. Then moving away from that, the days to maturity factored in, the moisture level. The moisture level.
Yes.
When we talk of the moisture level, we need not judge moisture by just looking at the crop.
Yes.
We need to make at least an informed decision that makes sure that we are not incurring a loss by going in prematurely or too late. For example, if the moisture is too high and you have it, you might incur losses from rots, whether in storage or where you're going to be sending your grain to the market. There might be some rejections which might lead you to then incur losses in terms of handling your grain. Yes. Then if the moisture is too low, if it's below the 4.5 stipulated mark, then you might be incurring some weight losses. Yes. And it exposes your crop to weevil damage. So you don't want that in the field. So the optimum moisture level that you must look at, yes, when we reach physiological maturity, the moisture will be at around 30 to 35%. Allow your crop to dry down further to reach around 15, 16, 17%, and then start thinking of harvesting. Then when you harvest, if it's not dry enough, look for ways to further dry your crop to a moisture level of 4.5%, which is desired by the market and is recommended for storage.
Okay, thank you so much, Wendy. As you can see, viewers, behind us, there are trucks that are waiting to be filled by the combine harvester. Wendy here is emphasizing on the fact that let us avoid judging moisture content by merely looking at a cob. That is very uninformed and it leads to great losses. We're going to go on a short commercial break. We'll be right back with this and more in the second segment. Stay tuned. Thank you, viewers, for staying tuned to Agricultural New Directions, Agribusiness in support of Vision 2030, where we talk about production economics here in Zimbabwe, the agricultural fraternity, to ensure that our Zimbabwean farmers are profitable in all of their ventures. Now, viewers, we encourage you to be a part of these conversations. Feel free to get in touch with the producer, Wadzanai Manyore. It's on 0772 807 506. Alternatively, you can like our Facebook page, Agribusiness with Wadzanai. Make a follow-up on this episode and more episodes, and leave your comments and suggestions. They are most welcome to us. It's Agribusiness with Wadzanai on our YouTube channel. We are also now available on Twitter, where most of these discussions take place. It's at Agribusiness 110. Now, earlier on, before into the break, Wendy here was highlighting and discouraging our Zimbabwean farmers for judging and trusting their eyes to judge moisture content. We are here in the second segment where we are going to be listening to the farmer's perspective on his journey in farming. I am joined by Mike Rukau. Mike, thank you for joining us today.
Nice to meet you, Wadzanai. How are you?
I'm okay. I would like to thank you for allowing us to take part and come here and record our episodes. I can see that you're already at work. We have trucks waiting to be filled and your combine harvester behind us. I would like you, as we get into our discussion, how's been your journey like in farming here in Zimbabwe? How has it been like?
It's been an interesting journey, but yeah, it's got its ups, it's got its downs. But we've got a very supportive government that is supporting food production. And yeah, we would like to thank, because this crop was grown under what they call NIAPs, or the other name for command. So we're very grateful for the support. And as you can see, we've got a wonderful crop thanks to them. Then in addition, this is 659, SC659. As they always say, it's good to start with the right seed.
Yes.
And you'll have a happy ending.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was very detailed, Michael. I would like us to talk about maybe if you would want to encourage our audience at home and be direct with them. Is it profitable, this farming business?
Yes. Definitely, yes. It's a very profitable business. Farming is a very, very profitable business. You just need to put in the hours. You need to put in the hours. You need to put in the homework. You need to do your research. You need to continue learning. It's a learning process. For me personally, every season is a learning curve. Yeah. Yes. I learn something new every single season. And yeah, apply good economical practices. Have the right infrastructure. With climate change, you have to climate-proof your business. You have to climate-proof your business. You need to put in irrigation. You need the right equipment. You need good agronomical practices. You need the right seed. And you also need the right partner. And we've got the right partner. And yeah, you'll be smiling all the way to the back.
Mike, what is your relationship like with the other stakeholders in the industry? You spoke of having good financiers. I understand that the model also comprises of having agronomists in terms of maybe the private sector and even agri-techs in terms of the agronomists who will be moving up and about. Can you maybe highlight and emphasize on a good working relationship with the agronomists after you've gotten your finances, of course, you've gotten your capital, your working inputs to get into the field. Now, what is your relationship like and your words of encouragement in terms of having a viable relationship with agronomists?
Currently, we've got a very beautiful setup in the country. And the country has got a hive and it's full of very good agronomists. So you'll have an agronomist visiting you from Agritechs, our local Agritechs officer. You also have an agronomist coming from the fertilizer companies. So you've got a nice mix, you've got different opinions coming through, and they all help. They help correct certain mistakes. They also help validate certain good practices that you're doing. So I think the country is blessed in terms of human capital. In terms of human capital, the country is very blessed. And we as farmers, we are happy, we are grateful. We now have lots of labs coming up for soil analysis, soil tests, even innovations in agriculture. Our agronomists are coming in, whether be they government agronomists, agronomists from the bank, or agronomists from private companies.
Okay.
Yeah, so we as farmers, we're very grateful. It's up to you to show an interest, to be passionate, and to learn to take criticism.
Okay. Learning to take criticism, it can be maybe a bitter pill to swallow for some of our farmers in Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
They might not be light on that. I want you to talk about some of the major pitfalls in agriculture, especially looking at maybe maize production, those that you'd want to highlight on. You would see that most of our Zimbabwean farmers might not get the real story, given that they are looking at you harvesting your maize. There's 5 trucks behind us, and harvester. They would think maybe it's a walk in the park. But I understand that every business venture is associated with risks, uncertainties, and pitfalls. Those that you might want to highlight so that a farmer that is maybe aspiring to get into agriculture this coming season has a clear picture of what he's getting into.
Yeah, surely. I think the most important factor is good agronomical practices. I think that's surely the first starting point. You can have all your resources, you can have all the advice, but if you don't follow through with good agronomical practices, definitely you will fall. The biggest challenge I can see for us maize farmers, especially in Zimbabwe, is climate change. That's the biggest challenge. We don't get the patterns that we were used to even when we were growing up. The rainfall patterns that we're used to, and now the rainfall patterns are different. But thanks to technology and innovation, we now have center pivots. We now have, you can even have drip irrigation,
Yes.
overhead irrigation. Yeah, so putting in the right infrastructure for you to climate-proof your farming enterprise reduces your risks. It's part of the risk mitigation strategies that you can tackle. Even on the power side, we're working on solarizing our farms so that we also lessen the burden on the national grid, but also ensure that we've got food production for our country.
Thank you so much, Mike, for having us with us today. That was very detailed.
So thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to have you guys here.
Very here because we're looking at maize production, the success story in Mashonaland West in Cheggu. He is telling us of solarizing our operations so that we lessen the burden on the national grid. As you can see, we are standing in sunlight. We have abundance of sunlight here in Zimbabwe. We need to take advantage of that and get into solarization. We're going to go on a short commercial break. We'll be right back with this and more in the third and final segment. Stay tuned. Thank you, Zimbabwe, for staying tuned to Agricultural New Directions, Agribusiness in support of Vision 2030. Today, we're looking at maize harvesting after its proper production, that is through making use of the agronomists that we have in our country. Now, at this point in time, I'm once again joined by Wendy Mazura. Earlier on, we're joined by the farmer who was taking us through the nitty-gritties of how he managed to produce this beautiful maize crop. Wendy, we are here in the third and final segment. Welcome back.
Thank you so much, Wadza. I'm very excited that we are here at the end game of any cropping venture, which is harvesting, and I'm happy to have seen the combine harvester offloading the grain.
As we get into our discussion, this final part, we are concluding. Can you maybe highlight, I understand that in Zimbabwe we have different harvesting mechanisms, depending, is it a commercial farmer, is it a smallholder farmer? In this case, this is a commercial farmer who's using a combine harvester to harvest his hectare of maize. Can you maybe talk of those key fundamentals, the checkpoints of when using a combine harvester?
So when you are harvesting a crop, Wadza, as the common saying goes, there are many ways to skin a cat. It's important for you to understand the implements that you have, the capacity to get, the resources that you have, and the labor that surrounds you before you make a decision on how you are going to harvest. So when we come back to the issues to do with harvesting, mechanically using a combine harvester, you need to do the following checks. To begin with, if the combine harvester is yours, at the time the crop reaches physiological maturity, you should already start servicing the combine harvester in preparation for you to do the harvesting process without any delays in terms of breakdowns or some challenges that might occur during the process. If you are going to be hiring a combine harvester, you need to match the head of the combine harvester with the interrow spacing that you used. If you use 90 centimeters, if you use 75 centimeters, you need to make sure that at least the combine harvester matches the interrow spacing you have, because you don't want a situation where one line is being stepped on by the wheel or is not being harvested efficiently, because it increases gleaning costs, whereby you're going to put people in the field to come in after the harvester is gone out. But we are seeing here that the efficiency is good. The harvester is not leaving anything in terms of the crop that is in the field. The other thing you need to check for is whether the combine harvester is splitting the grain when it's cutting. When you're also harvesting, you don't want to have a lot of splits, because they reduce the quality of your grain when you go to the market. So you want to increase in terms of the quality by ensuring that the harvester is not breaking the grain into pieces when you are harvesting. The other thing that you need to do is to check and follow behind the combine harvester to make sure that no cobs are being left lying on the ground, because it also increases losses and those cobs will not be accounted for. Then the last thing that you need to also take note of when you are using a combine harvester, you need to make sure that if you are hiring it, you hire it timelessly, because you don't want to be under pressure at a time when everyone else is harvesting and everyone is hiring a combine harvester. That's when you also want to hire. So you need to hire in advance so that you don't incur any delays when the time comes for you to harvest.
Thank you so much, Wendy. You touched on a pertinent issue that speaks to planning and being timeless in your operations. You don't need to go look for a combine harvester just as you are looking that, you know what, my maize has gained its moisture content that is required. Now you are in search of a combine harvester. You might not find it. Finally, Wendy, as we close, you might find that in as much as the farmer might have applied the good agronomic practices in his field, he might lose it at the end. Kuputsa chirongo wasvika. We are talking of post-harvest maintenance, or how to curb and control post-harvest losses. Can you take us through that?
Wadza varimi vedu dzimweni dzenguva vanoputsa chokwadi chirongo vachinge vasvika nemhaka yekuti vanenge vakundikana kucherechedza zviga zvinochengetedza gohwo ravo atinoti isusu mapost harvest losses. When we look at post harvest, Wadza, did you know that farmers lose between 20 to 30% of their yield during harvesting or after harvest when they store their grain? So for farmers to safeguard against that, it's important for them to ensure that at the time they are harvesting, all checks and balances are in place. If you are going to be going into the field to harvest and you have a lot of your stocks lying on the ground with the cobs on them, it means even the efficiency of the harvester is minimized. So you need to make sure that the stocks that will be lying on the ground, be it due to termite damage or wind that might have caused some lodging, have been lifted up to form some stakes, or have been made in a way that at least the harvester will be able to feed on them, because you don't want them to be lying on the ground because of termite damage or any other causes. Then the other thing that you need to do, if you're going to be harvesting mechanically, you need also to make sure that once the harvesting is done, if you're going to load into a truck, you need to cover the truck on the edges. Sometimes you might have some equipment that has seen the taste of time.
Yes.
That is worn out. So in some cases, you might lose the grain through the sides. So some farmers might put some sacks at the edges there to make sure that no grain is lost, because every single grain counts. Then when we get to the storage stage, you need to store your grain in a secure place, away from the direct sunlight, in a cool environment, so that it doesn't deteriorate in terms of its quality and quantity. If you're going to be stacking in bags, make sure that it's on a raised pallet so that there's no direct contact with the ground where moisture might come up and cause some rots. So those balances and checks should be in place in terms of the storage so that the farmer also gets maximum yields. And lastly, you need to observe the first in, first out concept, the FIFO concept. If you're going to be using your grain, you use the old grain first while the new grain goes in, so that you continue to have fresh grain and continue to safeguard your yield. Guard your yields jealously.
Thank you so much, Wendy. That was very detailed. On that note, we have come to the end of this week's edition. From me, your host, Zanai Manyore. I'm also on Instagram. It's a W Manyore. And the crew behind the scenes. Have yourselves a fabulous evening. Thank you for watching.